What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This right here, as you all know, podcast where we dive into the deep, dark, murky waters with a plethora of legendary guests. For those of you who don't know what plethora means, that's a lot. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as a.k.a. the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. That's right, you're looking at the one and only Son of Glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Bop Loo Bop Wop Bam Bam Shazam Hot Damn. Ooh, I'm feeling good. But most importantly, I'm looking good. Everybody in the house looking good, including my beautiful Pod Scum audience. For me, you know how I gets it done. Boom. Right there, kids. Coming to you, as always, from the lush lavender lounge of love. Look at this place, my utopia. This is where it all goes down. Joined, as always, by my main man, the Keith Hernandez puppet. A living legend right there. He's asking for a few nicknames now, so we're going to start adding some. Greatest first baseman of all time, Cocaine Cowboy, Mr. Mustachio. It's in progress, We'll get him some nicknames. We've also added Mr. International and, of course, Mr. Lo-Fi, because this is the No Frills podcast. You get no frills, but you get plenty of thrills. And that's looking at this face, framed in gold, baby. Look at it. Rockstar right here. Speaking of Rockstar, still looking for virtuoso level players for my glam sleaze metal passion project, Love Sword. So if you think you got the chops, hit me up. So far, I've had no takers. But hey, I understand it's intimidating. But our guest is here, so I digress with all that. Let's get down to it and chop it up with my Pod Scum. Let's go. See, the part about this I was the most worried about, Mark, was getting the name right, but I'm going to nail it. Mark TREMALGIA.
There you go. You got it.
I did. My first name is also Mark, and I have a difficult last name to pronounce too, which is why I don't use it and have it show up on here, because it's been botched so many times over the years. And I think I've heard, as you probably have, just about every variation possible of it.
Oh my God, you can't even imagine. Sometimes so bad I don't even know they're saying my last name.
Mark, you played with just about everybody out there. I was looking at your resume when I was making my notes, on things to talk to you about. But is there one act or group or band that you associate yourself the most with, or are you kind of consider yourself more like a freelance guy?
I've been pretty freelance my whole career, but I'm really enjoying playing with the Little Caesar and CRUZADOS guys. I've been doing it for 5 years now. So, other than BANG TANGO, it's one of my longest tenures in a band. And, Ron and I are really tight, and I just have a great time touring and doing records with them.
What about Mark Knight? Still rolling with him?
I haven't played with Mark in a few years, unfortunately. I've gotten so busy with other projects and everything. And, we still get together. I sit in with him sometimes here and there, we just talked today, as a matter of fact, but I haven't done any projects with him in a while. I mean, down the road, I could imagine us, getting on another record together or something like that.
What a great guy, though. I've had him on here. Awesome dude.
Oh, man, I've known Mark since, I joined the original BANG TANGO. I replaced Kyle Stevens and got to do a tour with them, and he was my roommate, and we just hit it off. We played guitar, those guys would go out looking for girls, and Mark and I'd go to the hotel room and play guitar till 5 a.m.
Got your priorities in order.
I try.
I'm curious, to backpedal a little bit. What was your upbringing like? Like how early on did you get bit by the music bug and know this was something you were going to pursue as a career?
It's crazy, Mark. I was 6 years old, and my sister's husband brought a guitar to Christmas, and I was obsessed. He taught me 3 songs, and I had practiced them relentlessly. And my mom said, if you can play those, I'll buy you your own guitar. And so I borrowed his guitar and learned, and I kind of never looked back. I knew all I wanted to do was play music. I had a little foray into sports. I had fun playing baseball, but I knew I wasn't going to like be a pro athlete or anything. But my mom was a jazz singer. My sisters sang, and I was in bands since I've been about 12 years old. So I have some funny pictures of me. My mom just sent me of me, with like my first band with my short hair trying to look tough with my guitar.
And do you remember what was going on in your household at the time, as far as like, what music really, or that you really remember hitting you and really resonating with you and kind of getting, the bug in you, so to speak?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and they all listened to different music, well, my sister's fairly similar. They were really, my family's a lot, my brothers and sisters are a lot older than me. So they, grew up in the 60s. So my sisters turned me on to Motown and, like girl groups and stuff like that. Whereas my brothers, one brother loved the blues, like through and through. B.B. King was my first concert. So he had me into Albert Collins, Albert King, B.B. King. And then my brother Fred was into like Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Average White Band. So he liked some funky stuff, but also some rock. But my neighbor was like a huge rock fan, and he would blast Led Zeppelin out his window all day long. And so I hear Zeppelin 2 or Zeppelin 4, and it takes me right to like being a little kid again.
Yeah. And when we were hunkered down and everything went to, the world went to shit a couple of years ago, and we were hunkered down with this, COVID and everything was quarantined, and it really put a damper on obviously like live shows and, even bands that were, in the process of making their albums or whatever. How did it affect you, or derail or not derail any plans that you had going on musically at the time?
Well, we had tours booked. I mean, Little Caesar, we had a busy summer planned. We were starting at the end of March. We were doing weekend dates. We were going to Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and then we were going to Europe for September and October. And all of it got blown out of the water. So, I really had to scramble. Thank God for unemployment. I was able to survive on that for a little while. And I just was trying to do, session work, home stuff, like people would send tracks and I'd play guitar on them. Or, I did a couple fun videos with artists that I play with where we did like, YouTube, where we'd all film ourselves playing a portion of the song and then they'd edit it together. The big thing that I did that kept me busy though, was I did a weekly thing. Every Sunday I was doing a new solo. So I'd take like Another Brick in the Wall or Stairway to Heaven, and I'd learn it over the week. And I try to get everything like from the inflection to the tone. I try to get
very nuanced.
And it took the whole week really, so people go, how come you're not doing it? And I go, because I had the time to really listen to the song 100 million times and, play along with it, tweak my tone and tweak every little note. But I don't have that kind of time now, fortunately.
And I read online that and of course, obviously, correct me if any of this is wrong, because obviously we don't want to believe everything that we see on the internet, because it's not all true, believe it or not. But at a young age, though, you did set out from Connecticut and made the trek out to LA, which it's certainly not something that a lot of other young men didn't try, throughout the 80s or whatever. But I mean, what was the impetus for pulling up stakes and going to LA? Is it just the same old story of everybody else? That's the place to go.
Well, kind of, but a lot of the bands I liked came from LA. But the funniest thing is, I had a drummer who was 1 year older than me. He was 18, I was 17, and I said, well, we live in Connecticut. I could either go to New York or Massachusetts, which my mom really wanted. But I was like, I want to see what California is like. So she let me on winter break from high school fly to California with my drummer, just the 2 of us. We rented a car and stayed on Sunset. And I mean, I fell in love right away. But the very last day we went to Sunset Grill, and GNR, who hadn't yet broken yet, they were doing a photo shoot there. Welcome to the Jungle was out, but not even Sweet Child of Mine yet. And, we were freaking out. We're these little kids from Connecticut, and they're Slash standing in front of me. So we went over. We said, hey, we're here checking it out if we should move here. And Duff piped up. He goes, definitely, come to LA. It's the place to make it. We were like, guess we got to move to LA. So as funny as it is, that was like the thing that made me go back home and go, you know what? I graduated from high school at 18. Worked a whole summer in September of '87, got into a car and came to LA and never looked back.
And you mentioned Slash, and you know, obviously you're young when you're meeting him, so you're awestruck or whatever. But with all the people that you played with, and you know, traveling and whatnot, you know, can you remember times when you yourself have been starstruck, like you know, met somebody that really blew you away?
Stevie Wonder, the first
No
band
kidding.
that we. Yeah, the first band we had a record deal with, this band called Doc's House Mob. We were a 13-piece rap act. It was before I even got into Bang Tango. And we were signed to Mercury through Dick Clark's Battle of the Bands. We played the Wiltern and won the contest and won a record deal with Mercury Records. So as funny as this is, they sent us to the American Music Awards. And at the backstage party, they sat us at the rap table. So I was sitting with Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Tupac Shakur, Will Smith, and the Dog Pound are at this big round table, and I'm like long hair down to my waist, just the only white guy there, like going, this is crazy. And so we're laughing. I'm hearing some funny stuff. At one point, Will Smith goes, "Hey, is anybody else going to jam with the band?" And Tupac goes, "No, Fresh Prince, no one's going to jam with the band." And everybody busted out laughing. I was like, oh my God. So we're sitting there and we get a tap on the shoulder. And this guy goes, "Hey, you know, my client wants to talk to you." And we go over there and it's Stevie Wonder. And he goes, "I love you guys. I've heard your record and I'm going to be going on tour in a couple months. I want to know if you're interested in opening for me." And I've never been like tongue-tied before. I just was like, "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wonder." Wow. Because he's been a hero of mine my whole life. I've always loved everything about his musicianship, his voice, his music. And so we were both, and the funny thing is Doc, the main rapper of the group, you can't shut him up normally. Even he was like stumped. He was like, he was like,
I mean, you're in the presence of greatness. You know what I mean? It's hard not to, you know, I mean
there's not many musical geniuses like him.
And I certainly have to backpedal for a minute though. I mean, a 13-piece rap group. So you were rapping?
No, I was playing guitar in the band.
Okay.
We were sort of like the first of those rap rock crossovers. Basically, there was a band called the Aunt Jemimes that was a local Sunset Strip band, and they were great. They weren't hair metal. I mean, you know, they were into the scene, but they had a sax player and a harmonica, and they had two bodyguards as like a goof. They had these two huge black guys that stand on stage like this. And so they wrote a song called Unity. And these guys would come up and rap at the end of the night on this song. And it started really attracting crowds. So Doc said, "What if we put a band together and we call it Doc's House Mob, and we do the No Bozo Jam," which was this free jam every Monday night. And so we started doing that. And we had Vince Neil come on stage. We had Axl come on stage. We had Chad Smith sit in on drums. We had Ray Gillen come on stage. Like every week we'd have some celebrity who go, "These guys are, oh my." So we started writing songs and ended up getting an in at this Dick Clark Battle of the Bands. I mean, we had to go through like 5 rounds before we even got to the live TV show. And then we did the live TV show and won that. It's on YouTube. If you search
AGT, America's Got Talent, before there was America's Got Talent, more or less.
Exactly.
Right? Or American Idol or, you know, whatever show you want to compare it to. But you know, to finish the story though, so did this group ever, did that ever come to fruition, the Stevie Wonder tour?
Unfortunately, like a lot of record deals and things, it fell apart. We went to A&M Studios. We did 5 songs, and the label said, "Okay, we're going to sign the core members," which means the 2 guitars, bass, drums, and the main rapper. And the main rapper was adamant that all 13 members signed to the record deal. And they said, "It is not heard of. It's not done. They're your sidemen. You have to pay them. These are the guys who are a part of the record contract," which I was in the core group. So I was like, let's do it, you know, but the main rapper he fought tooth and nail, and finally the label said, "Nope, we're not going to deal with you anymore." And he bought the masters from them, and we got dropped. And then I ended up joining Bang Tango shortly after that because it kind of started going downhill. We were getting less shows. And I mean, we did some big stuff. We opened up for Prince. We opened up for LL Cool J. We opened up for Suicidal Tendencies. We did the USC spring break. There was like 40,000 kids in the quad. It was like, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Just mayhem while this rap group is playing, you know.
That blows me away though, saying that you opened for Prince. Cause he, you know, even though I'm a hard rock and metal guy, usually, he's the pinnacle for me.
Oh man. My
all-time favorite.
Yeah, just knowing he was watching us in the balcony was intimidating, you know? I mean, I'm
I would
thinking,
imagine.
I cannot
Yeah.
believe, like, we're playing right before this guy, and holy cow, you know? And, you know, that band, I'm playing mostly funk guitar. I get one little solo at the end of the night when they introduce the band. I get like 16 bars to have fun. But other than that, I'm pretty much just going chicka, 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 chicka,
Yeah.
you know? But it was great. Don't get me wrong.
So how do you make the connection and link up with the guys in in Bang Tango? Did you previously know them? Did you audition for them after Kyle left? How did you end up with those guys?
We did a show with them when I was in Doc's House Mob. We played a homeless benefit downtown LA, which I think the video from Bang Tango and Doc's House Mob is still on YouTube. And Christopher Lloyd hosted it, and we played right before Bang Tango. And I remember getting off stage, and Joe came up and he goes, "You're playing. I've never heard a guitar player play like you in this scene." He's like, "You are amazing." He's like, "Let's exchange numbers and maybe we can do a side project." Cause you know, he goes, my band right now, we're recording our third record, Love After Death, and it's going great. And I'm probably gonna go on tour with them, but I want to do stuff while I'm in town. So I was like, hey, sounds like a blast. So we put together this band called the Vagabonds, and he's had many iterations of it. So you might have heard of Joe's Vagabonds, but yeah, I did about 8 or 9 years with him. And we had, you know, Kyle on bass. We had a mutual friend on keys. We had we've had a lot of different bass players and drummers. You know, we've had Randy Castillo at one point was in the band. We had Brian Forsyth was in the band. We had Chuck Garrick was in the band, Sean McNabb. So we went through a lot of people, but basically we wrote funky originals and then we'd throw covers in. And we played every Tuesday night at the Coconut Teaser, and then we'd play other places around town. So we were all, you know, making decent money and staying out there. And then one day Joe calls me up and goes, "Hey, can you come over to my house?" And I go, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Okay, take a walk with me." And I'm like, what is going on? You know? And he goes, "We got a tour booked of Europe in March," which this was like November. And he goes, "And Kyle Stevens quit the band. We've auditioned 30 guys and none of them are right." And he goes, "And would you be interested? Can you play hard rock?" And I said, "Are you kidding? Yeah, that's my bread and butter. You know, the funk thing is what I learned to do in that band." Right. And he's like, "Okay." So I went, and, you know, he goes, "You're not in the band until like Mark says," because he's the other guitar player. So I showed up to audition for him and I learned everything. And I played one song and those guys go, give us a minute. And they all walked out, and I'm standing there with my guitar by myself in the rehearsal room going, "This is fucking weird. Are they going to come back in and go, get out of here?" You know? Yeah. They came back in and they go, "Hey, you know, you're in." And I'm like, "I only played one song." And Mark's like, "I can tell your feel. You'll be fine. It's great." You know? And I was like, "Okay, cool." You know? And
well, that's when you know you nailed it. One song, right? I mean, that's got to make you feel pretty good when they only need to see you play one, you know? I mean,
it definitely, I felt lucky, you know? I mean, I knew Mark was a nice guy and we got along because he came to one of the Vagabond shows and sat in. We had Mike Starr from Alice in Chains was on bass.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, so Mark came down to watch and ended up sitting in and playing a song. So he told me, he goes, even before the audition rehearsal, he goes, "I kind of figured you'd be the guy." He goes, "I just wanted you to have some distortion and see what that was like." He goes, "But I already knew you and I played well together," which obviously 30 years later, him and I still play.
Still jamming together. Yeah. And you know, I talked about this on here on several episodes, but obviously the music business is vastly different. You know, now with the platforms and, you know, the lack of labels and traditional record contracts. You know, do you find what you do more beneficial? You know, kind of lending your services out rather than being kind of tethered to one specific group.
Right. You know, it's hard for me to say because I haven't really been tethered to one group until like this Little Caesar Cruzados thing. And it's only been, you know, 2 and 5 years respectively. Yeah. So it's hard to say, but I will say that, you know, going to Europe all the time, you really feel the love of the music and the live music, and people love buying merch. Like that's one thing is we underestimate almost every time we go t-shirts or CDs and it, you know, and it's like,
sorry, we're all sold out.
Yeah, you know, and and it sucks when that happens, you know, because people like sometimes travel 3 hours from their little village to come see you, and then they can't even get the shirt they want. So, you know, so we've worked that out. We've got people on the road now. We can get more printed because, you know, twice a year we're spending at least 4 to 5 weeks in Europe. So we're kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work over there, but it's been a blessing to be able to go do that. So by sticking with one so far, I do really enjoy it. But I always wonder like how nice it would have been to have the band that had a hit and be able to stay doing that rather than just backing, Billy Gibbons and then backing, Bob Weir and then backing Linda Perry and then back, you know what I mean? Like, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. To get to travel and play with heroes is like unbelievable. But like, there would have been something cool about like the band I came to LA or Doc's House Mob, taking off, and I get to like actually do that.
and as somebody who's such a gifted, accomplished guitar player as yourself, are there other guys, or I should ask, who are some guys who, and I don't want to ask and word it the dreaded influence question, because you've been doing this a long time or whatever, but who are some guys whose guitar playing that you just love? They start playing, or you hear them on an album or on the radio or live, and you just love their playing.
I'm a sucker for like blues rock guys, Dwayne Allman's probably my all-time favorite, just because there's something that touches me about the way he hits the notes, the way he bends them. And that being said, I love Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks. Derek can stop me in my tracks anytime. I don't know that there's ever been a guitar player who's almost brought me to tears as much as him. Like some stuff he plays is like overwhelmingly great,
Yeah.
But I love shredder guys too. I grew up in Connecticut, so I used to see Nuno all the time before they made it, because if you're a guitar player in Connecticut, they're like, you gotta see this guy in Extreme. Holy shit, this guy's good in Extreme. So we drive to Boston and then leave there going, I think I'm gonna quit guitar. I mean, like, bother, and you hear what this guy can do, and he's our age. Are you shitting me?
So I'm curious to know, when you write, regardless of whether it's, songs, lyrics, I don't know if you do lyric writing or writing guitar parts, but whatever you're creating, you have a specific, yourself, a specific creative process. Like, do you treat the creative process like, some guys treat it like a job, like, okay, I'm going to go in this room for 2, 3, 4 hours and I'm going to write. And some guys seem to just have it just, popping in, throughout the day, and they're recording stuff or they're writing stuff down. But what's your individual process like?
It's definitely inspiration. I don't find it like work. I can't, and I've tried that before, and it's interesting that guys can do that they can go, okay, from, 1 to 4, I'm going to write music. I can't, like, I need to be playing guitar, and I play a riff that inspires me. I get my recorder out, I'll put the riff down. Sometimes I'll have another part, I'll put both those down, maybe get a drum beat for it too. And then for lyrics, a lot of times what I do is I drive around in my car. I'll get a pad and paper and I'll drive around and I'll sing, because I can hear it coming, and melodies come to my head, and it's odd how well it works. Like, I was never considered myself a lyric writer, but I noticed I always sing when I'm driving. So one day I was like, fuck it, let's give it a try. Let's get in the car and grab a little notepad, and I'll just pull over and write stuff down. And all of a sudden I'm going, holy shit, 3 songs. How did that just happen?
Yeah, so you find great creativity in the car. And I guess, a lot of stuff, needs to pass the drive test anyway. If it sounds good in the car, then it sounds like something you'd want to drive around and jam to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, isn't that funny? It's like one of our main spots we listen to music these days, other than our home,
It really is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because obviously, there's such an influx of music being created right now. We're certainly not in a time period where we're not getting music. I mean, people can sit home now and they can make an album on their computer without even know how to play an instrument. So with that much music being, such an influx of music in the world, when you have time to sit down and listen as a fan, are you one of those guys that kind of falls back on your old kind of standards, or do you explore like new music? Because for me, doing this podcast, I certainly love to talk to well-respected artists that have been doing it for a long time, but I have been trying to get better about having younger artists on here and kind of give them that platform, because I realize that it's very feast or famine right now. So I've tried to be a little bit better about going on and trying to explore new music. But when I have time, it is tough not to go back and listen to shit from the 80s and shit that makes me happy. I mean, what's your music listening experience like, though?
I'm like you. I get inspired sometimes to listen to the new bands. I get guitar magazines. I'm a nerd. I love guitar magazines, and I like going online and going on forums. So if somebody says, "Oh my God, this guitar player or this band or this artist," I check it out. I don't care if it's pop or whatever, you know, and if it moves me, you know, I mean, if it's Jacob Collier and like maybe his music doesn't move me, but what a musician this kid is, like his reharmonization and harmony. Like I've never heard anything like it in my life, you know, but I wouldn't seek it out to really listen to, you know, but like you, I mean, sometimes I go, God, I haven't heard Zeppelin 2 in a while. I haven't heard Physical Graffiti, you know, like I gotta try. I'm gonna put this thing on and just, you know.
I know. I try to tell young guys that come on here the same thing. I'm trying not to be that 50-year-old codger that's just gonna say, all right, I've got some time to listen to music now. What do I want to do? Throw on Ride the Lightning. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be that guy who's just like not, you know, it's not important to me necessarily to be on the cutting edge and have my ear to the pavement and know everything that's going on in the music world, because, you know, that'd be an impossible nowadays. So one of my guests told me the other day that there's like, you know, something like 60,000 new songs are being put up on the platforms daily, you know? I mean, it's incredible the amount of music that's actually just, you know, just flying in from everywhere.
I mean, everybody has the ability to do it now. You don't even have to be a musician to do it. I mean, for better or worse, you know, people can be creative, you know, but everything's going to get oversaturated, obviously. And it's funny, you know, with the way music is going, I feel like there's so much more perfection to it, you know, with computers and how everybody does it. So like Paul Ill, my one of my writing partners, bass player, he and I decided let's just record as a 3-piece. So we just went into the studio on Tuesday and just laid down like 3 original songs and just bashed them out live as a 3-piece. I played the solos live, like no overdubs except for the lead vocal, you know, and it's just like, who's really like Old Government Mule did that, you know, like, I don't know too many bands that are doing that these days. So we thought, fuck it, let's give it a try. You know, I mean, mistakes and all. You don't hear mistakes in music like you used to, but I you know, everything is so perfect in music these days that when I listen to Zeppelin 2, I go, God, I can hear that chord chunk, or I can hear he missed the kick right there, or I can hear the bass. It's so weird. Like I didn't care before. I thought it was cool. Now I hear it as a mistake because it is.
Well. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was another thing I want to ask you about. You know, as a musician, you know, as a guy who gets up and plays live music, I'm interested to get your take on, and you're talking about, you know, wanting to, you know, see and hear the experience, you know, warts and all, so to speak. What do you feel about like when bands like, you know, we've recently seen Motley Crue and Kiss. I always pick on those two, but they've taken a hellacious whipping though on YouTube for backing tracks and, you know, smoke and mirrors and you know, whatever tricks they're pulling, you know, to enhance their sound. You know, do those bands deserve a free pass because of their legendary status, or is this just not cool to be going in the live setting and seeing people, you know, not playing authentically?
That's the $1 million question, Mark, you know, like, because I mean, personally, I love raw, live, real music, and I love musicians that live to play, but I also respect the fact that maybe Motley Crue wants to give the fans what they want to hear, you know. I mean, like people are they have that demoitis thing where they know what the CD sounds like or the album sounds like, so they want to hear that when they go live, and by using those backing tracks, Motley Crue's really giving the fans, the hardcore fans, what they want. Do I agree with it? I don't know. You know, I mean, I think there's a place for it, you know, like that Falling in Reverse band. So, Mark, I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
That's all right. That's all right.
I meant to put myself on Do Not Disturb, as would be good to do here. Let me do that. Bam. Am I back?
I don't see your face. No, I don't see your. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. Like, no worries.
There was that controversy with Falling in Reverse and Sebastian Bach where they were going back. But see, Falling in Reverse is using that as a musical part. It's not just like flying in vocals or a guitar part that can't be played because the other guitar player's playing something. They're actually. So for me, I mean, I think that's cool. Like that's modern. It might not be something I'm going to listen to or seek out, but I appreciate that they're creative enough that they can write a computer part that's going to play through their song. That's actually a piece of their music. So, you know, it's really hard to say, because from a personal perspective, I want to hear the band warts and all, but fans, I don't think want to hear the warts and all, you know? So it's hard for me to even have an opinion on it, because I think both sides have a valid thought on it.
Right. Well, and And I think too, obviously, you know, who's going to replicate the stuff that they did 20 or 30 years ago? You know, you're not going to get Kiss that's going to sound like Kiss from 1977. You know, I mean, it's just,
Right.
you know, our bodies, you know, you just can't do what we used to do. And I think, you know, and especially in a situation like, you know, like Kiss. First of all, they've achieved such a legendary status. And I think with Kiss, it's never really necessarily been about the musicianship, because I don't think those guys are going to claim that they're the greatest musicians of all time. You know, a lot of it is the theatrics, and it is more going to see a show and a performance rather than, hey, we're going to see these four, you know, virtuoso players. You know, I mean,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
You know, so you kind of got to you got to accept it kind of for what it is, you know.
For sure, for sure. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a snobby musician by any means, but I'm a music lover. So and I appreciate players, whether it's, you know, trumpet, piano, drums, whatever, you know. I mean, I listen to Led Zeppelin and I hear John Bonham more than I hear the band, because his playing overwhelms me and I can't listen to anything else because it's so good, you know.
Yeah. And you did some playing with Michael DeBar?
I did a live record with him, and we wrote a bunch of music, and I did maybe about a year and a half with him. Michael's an awesome guy. I love playing with him. He's got so many facets. So like when I was playing with him, he was into kind of a Rod Stewart, like a swampy, soulful kind of music. And he was kind of coming out of a punk rock thing. And then we kind of went into Duran Duran, and then he went back to punk rock. So we ended up getting Lorne, the other guitar player in Little Caesar. Lorne ended up going and playing with him to do like the punk rock kind of thing. So Michael he's a very, very much a chameleon. He likes to go in and out of different musical stuff, but man, he's such a pleasure to play for. He's got such a great voice. He's such a great guy. And I mean, songs to remember for days. And, you know, we played great sold out shows, and I got a live record out of it. So that's pretty fun.
It's crazy because every time I see him, I just see Murdoch from MacGyver.
Right? I know. It is pretty amazing.
So you know, I've got some of your past projects written down here. So you know, currently there is still a Little Caesar then.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yes. Okay. And what about the Disreputable Few?
So that unfortunately has kind of fallen by the wayside. Two of the guys in it have other projects going on. So Paul and I have kind of continued that. So what happened with Disreputable Few is we did a couple records and we weren't really getting any traction. So we tried to rebrand by going to UNCLE DUANE'S Band, which combines some of the aspects of people we had backed, because everybody is like studio cats that was in the band. And so we did a tour with that actually went great. We got to play the big house out in Macon, and I played Dwayne's Gold Top that he played on Layla. It's like, it was a great little tour, but we came back from it and it kind of fell apart, unfortunately, after that. And so everybody got busy with their own projects. Paul, you know, he backs a lot of people, and I ended up doing the Cruzados and Little Caesar right around the same time. And so, yeah, it's been too hard to kind of get it back together with all our schedules, unfortunately. But one of my favorite bands that I've played in for sure. I mean, world-class musicians, and just, you know, we got to back Bob Weir for a while, and, you know, just being on stage with him is like being on stage with a shaman, you know, like he doesn't even say things. He just looks at you and you're like, oh, he wants me to solo right now. Oh, he wants me to do this, you know, like telepathy, you know, it's amazing.
I imagine that must have been what was going on when the Grateful Dead were actually like, I mean, like at the height of their powers, though, because they are such a legendary jam band that it's funny that you say that, because I'll bet you, I could see a lot of that being like eyes and just like a lot of physical cues up there on stage, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, because there's no way you could rip through like a song that's usually like a 5-minute song and turn it into like a 17-minute jam like they would do, and just, you know, all that just seems so, you know, improvisational, you know?
Absolutely. And then you get a song like Jack Straw, which has chord changes, so many I had to write them down, you know. I'm like, and here, this is a jam band that wings it as they go, yet this song I can't even keep up with all the changes.
and as a guitar player, you know, because I, you know, I don't play guitar, I'm not a musician, so for people out there that are, though, you know, and you talk about getting the magazines and being kind of like a gearhead, you know, like what's your preference, you know, towards like equipment for people that might want to know, like, what are you like a fan of as far as your guitars, your amps, your setup?
I'm very much a classic guy. I play mostly Gibsons and Fenders. Like I got three Pauls, an SG, a couple Strats and a Tele, Tele actually. And then I use like old Fender and Marshall amps. So, I have a deluxe and a bandmaster and a whole bunch of stuff back here, a Marshall Plexi. So all like kind of 60s stuff, you know, like that Allman Brothers or Paul Kossoff from Free, that kind of like Angus Young, like those are sounds and stuff that I really love. And like for my pedal board, I use all mini pedals because we travel so much. I used to have big giant pedal boards and they were just a nightmare to try to ship. And now it's like, I got, you know, 5 little pedals. I throw them in my bag, throw them on the board when I get to Europe, and works perfect.
Everything's been downsized nowadays, you know, for a convenient world, right? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's made it easier.
Are there musicians out there or bands or projects, you know, if you could play devil's advocate for a minute and like, you know, have like a wish list, are there artists out there that you would love to play with? Or, you know, is there anybody that's crossed your mind where, you know, where like, you know, in a fantasy world, you could say, geez, I would love to play, I would love to be a part of that person's band or play with that band or collaborate with that person?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think we all of us musicians definitely have that, especially like, you know, I love singers. So like Chris Robinson or the Black Crowes, that would be an amazing gig, you know, just I love what he does. Butch Walker's great. I've always loved him. All of his stuff. We used to play with him when he was in South Gang, like on the Strip. We'd play that on Sunday nights, and I can remember being backstage and him and I talking music, and I'm going, God, we like all the same stuff. It would be so fun to play with a guy like that, you know?
Yeah, very exciting too, because it looks like the Marvelous Three are getting back together again.
Oh, really? Oh,
from all the stuff that from all the stuff that I see, you know, and that was a huge band for Butch. I mean, really big in the 90s.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was the same guys from South Gang, except for Jesse, the singer, was he was the only guy who wasn't in it. Yeah. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's funny, you know, it's a funny question because I find myself thinking, who would I love to play with? Because I like the backing thing. And what happens, it seems to come so randomly, you know, like playing with Billy Gibbons, a huge ZZ Top fan, but man, it came out of nowhere. All of a sudden it's like, hey, you got 3 weeks to learn 25 ZZ Top songs. Holy shit. Okay. You know, and it was great doing that. Or like Bob Weir. I mean, I think he's somebody I would love to continue playing with, but he, you know, has Dead and Company. He's got the Wolf Brothers. And so he has other projects that keep him busy. And it's not that he doesn't think of us and reach out to us, because he's still in contact. He's great that way. But I was never really a huge Dead fan. I was a fan of the Allman Brothers in that their musicianship was like sharp, you know, like the Dead, they kind of jam and let things float around. Whereas, you know,
I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, and so I never really got into the Dead, but I tell you, when I got the 20 or 30 songs from Bobby that he was like, hey, sit down, learn these tunes, get the structure. And he was like, don't go and learn 72, you know, like don't learn this. And I'm thinking, what does that even mean? And then I go on Spotify and I'm like, oh my God, there's 180 albums. And like, there's live ones from every date in Europe in 1970. And I'm like, this is overwhelming. So I put a list together of studio versions, or what I would again, I'm a nerd, I'd go online and I'd find what their favorite version of songs were, and then I sat here and I charted everything out. And first rehearsal I get to, he just looks at you and like gives you this, like, change it right here, okay, we're doing it right here, you know, and you're going, wow, this is way easier than I thought it was going to be. But some of the tunes are really challenging, but you know, it's and it's just, it was quite an experience to do that, because he's not a guy I ever thought I'd want to play with, but after playing with him, he's a guy I wish I was still playing with.
and you know, with a guy like Billy Gibbons, obviously, you know, of ZZ Top fame. I mean, you know, if hard rock and you know, music fans in general don't know him, they should automatically have their fucking hard rock membership card fucking pulled. No questions asked. You know, how do you end up with him though? Does he tap you? You know, again, same question. You know, do you audition? You know, how do you make a correlation with the great Billy Gibbons?
Well, you know, connections, friends, and musicians, and all of my best gigs have all come from musicians that have said, this guy plays this way and he's a cool cat, you know. And I think it helps to be a guy, you know, I mean, you got to hang out with these people. They don't want to hang out with a guy who's going to be like, you know, Chris Farley in the elevator on SNL. So when you played with Hendrix in '69, what was that? You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to be a good hang. And so a friend of his recommended me, and I never had to audition. I just learned the songs and showed up. And I remember we played Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, the first thing, and he turned around to all of us and goes, "This'll work." And he turned around, and I was like, okay, I guess that means we got the gig, you know?
And do you geek out when you get any kind of praise like from a guy like that, though? Regardless of how long that you're playing, though, man, that's got to be something special, man. Like when like you got that stamp of approval from a guy like him, though.
Honestly, yeah. You spend your whole life and you never think Steve Lukather is going to go, dude, the way you played slide, you spent a lot of time in your bedroom, didn't you? And I was like, you got me, Steve. Yeah.
And that's high praise. You know, that's high praise. And it's funny talking about the Dead, because I always just remember, and, you know, I was a friend, I was a guy who had friends who were quote unquote deadheads, you know, I mean, and who were into music. And I'm kind of a lot like you, you know, I missed the boat on them. I love a lot of those jam bands. You know, I too love the Allman Brothers. You know, I mean, I get what you're saying there. You know, about the Dead playing very loose, and you know, the Allman Brothers being such a tight band. The one thing that we did used to love when we were teenagers, though, is that because I'm in upstate New York, anytime the Dead would do any shows, you know, there was always an influx of LSD in the area after they left town. You know what I mean? So there was always there was all of a sudden there'd be acid going around.
Right. Well, no, it's funny because there was a park in Hartford right next to the Civic Center that the Dead used to play, and on the news they would be like, the park is overrun with hippies right now. I can remember watching the news stories as a kid going like, what? You know, there's like 100,000 people in Centennial Park today. So I
Those guys were never going to be like dangerous, though. You know what I mean? Like, you worry more, man, like about like, you know, like, I mean, like, what are those guys doing? They're throwing Frisbees around, playing hacky sack and tripping their faces off. You know what I mean? Like, no harm there. You know what I mean? Those guys aren't going to hurt you.
Right. I know, but you know, that's not what they acted like on the news, right? You know, I mean, especially
I get more scared going to like you know, like a couple of years back when my daughter was like young. I kind of bit the bullet because my wife didn't want to go, but she really wanted to go see Drake and Lil Wayne, and I'm just okay, I'm going to suck it up. You know, her and her friend and her boyfriend wanted to go. So I'm just like, I'm going to tag along to this, even though I don't want to go. I just feel like, you know, she shouldn't be at a concert like this at her age. And then all the way through the concert, I'm thinking, you know, this isn't going bad. I worried really about nothing, you know what I mean? And then, and then on the way to the parking lot, you know what I mean? Big melee breaks out, big riot or whatever, you know, I mean, security guards, you know, everyone's charged up, I guess, from this gangster rap. And all of a sudden, like, everybody's headed towards the exit with, you know, feeling a certain kind of way, very chippy, you know, I mean, you can feel it in the air. And it's so funny because we went out there, that same venue the next week, me and my wife went out and we had tickets to Chicago and REO Speedwagon. And it's so different, the crowd, you see everybody in like Hawaiian shirts, everybody's letting your car go first, and no, please, go ahead. I insist.
Yeah, right. There was no fights in the parking lot.
No fights in the everybody looks like, you know, everybody's like in their 40s and 50s, and everybody's dressed like Jimmy Buffett. You know, I mean, like it's a very docile crowd, and you know, I mean, like you know, it's you know, completely night and day. But I started to think at the concert, like, God, I worried for nothing, man. But lo and behold, you know, what I mean, like I knew something was gonna fucking jump off at some point. You know, it always, you know.
You think about, like, you know, the 80s, even GNR riots happened at their shows. I mean, obviously they helped to instigate them, but you know, I mean, there was still some craziness even at our rock shows.
Well, they certainly could have rose to the occasion there at that one in Canada there where Hetfield got burned. You know what I mean? Like, that was one of the big ones. And they always said, like, you know, Guns N' Roses, you know, they could have came in and saved the day, man, because they could have just came out and just played like a kick-ass, like 3-hour set, you know what I mean? And just really saved the day and made people forget about that abbreviated Metallica set, you know, but
right. Well, that's the thing with the 80s.
Didn't quite go down that way, but
playing in so much of the 80s rock scene that I, you know, ended up joining through Bang Tango with, you know, LA Guns and Warren and Enough's Enough and Cinderella and Quiet Riot, all the bands that we toured with. You know, it's funny because after that, playing with Bob Weir and jam bands, like, jam band guys, we all care about each other. We want everybody to be successful. We know there's enough room for everybody. It's all cool. The egos are like, let's get high and play. But in the 80s rock scene, it's like, we're the best band and you suck. We're going to do whatever we want for us and screw everybody else. And, you know, that always turned me off to that scene. And I feel like that's the Guns N' Roses at that era could have come up and just said, hey, let's do something for the people. Let's calm everybody down. But instead, it's like, excess rock star, and they just said, nope, we're not going out there. We're too good for that shit.
Yeah. And I'm sure they probably must look back on it with some kind of regret, I would hope, now that they're older and wiser. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you know, at least I would hope that they would. How about in the 90s there? Do you remember, are you able to put a finger on like how you felt, or like, or you know, or like what your perception was of the, you know, and it seemed like it just burst onto the scene, and then before you knew it, it was gone. But what were your feelings on like the whole like Seattle grunge scene when it exploded?
So being in LA at that point, and the strip was still pretty lively at that point, meaning you could go from the Whiskey to Gazzari's and walk up and down, and there'd be 2,000 people. I remember hearing Soundgarden's demo. I actually, you know, like I told you, growing up seeing Extreme, I ended up befriending them, and I knew like Nuno and Gary, and so they were doing a tour for the Porno Graffiti record, and their opening act was Alice in Chains. And I remember Nuno going, come early, come see this band, they're great. And I went to the Marquee with my best friend at the time, Dan Formica, and we sat at the bar with maybe 20 people and watched Alice in Chains play the best set I've ever seen a band play. They blew my fucking doors in, Mark. They were unbelievable. And it's funny, I read years later, Tom Morello was at the same show, because he said, I was at the Marquee and 10 people were there, 20 people were there. I was one of those people that was there. And we ended up leaving before Extreme even ended, because we were so jaw-dropped by how great Alice in Chains was. We were like, you know, we've seen Extreme our whole lives growing up. Let's take in the experience of Alice. So I knew there was some great music coming out of there, and I still remember hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit the first time, thinking this is a pretty great fucking song, you know. But also at the same time, Porno Graffiti came out. I loved that record, you know. And so so I was torn, but I could definitely feel that shift coming. I mean, I remember looking at pictures of myself in Doc's House Mob, and I went from like, you know, tight jeans to like a basketball jersey and shorts and combat boots, you know, like, it seems like, was it overnight? I changed my attire, you know?
Yeah, like suddenly you have a closet full of flannel shirts, and I remember
totally. And you know, a lot of those guys moved down to LA too. So Lane and Jerry, I remember hanging out with them guys, you know, with Mike coming up and playing with, you know, the Vagabonds. And so the scene to me was all one big scene. I didn't feel like we were taken over by grunge. I feel like a lot of people said, oh, we're shifting to heavier music, was kind of how it was portrayed in LA. And I remember it was the only time I cut my hair. I went on tour with Bang Tango. We were opening up for LA Guns and Warrant, and we were doing theaters. So there was still like, you know, 2,000 to 5,000 people. It was pretty fucking amazing. But I shaved my head into a mohawk, and I was wearing shorts and combat boots and like a flannel, you know. And I remember thinking, this is kind of weird.
And what was it about, you know, because Alice in Chains is certainly like right up there as far as like bands, you know. I mean, you know, big part of my backdrops, somebody at C made that for me, you know, that Lane Staley. I mean, that's carved out of wood right there. I mean, always been my favorite vocalist. You know, what was it that night though? Because I never got to see them live, you know, in their prime, you know, with Lane. But what was it? You know, I'm intrigued now that you brought that up. What was it that really was blowing you away? I mean, obviously Lane has a legendary voice, Jerry a legendary player, you know. But what was it specifically that night that was really, you know, that you found, you know, so magical about their performance?
They had the whole package from note one. The bass and drums were so tight. I mean, it was jaw-dropping how connected Mike and I can't remember the drummer, Sean, connected rhythm section was. And so they come out and the rhythm, and me and my buddy are looking at each other like, I mean, note one, we're like, holy shit, like Nuno wasn't lying. And then Lane starts singing and we're like, damn, that voice. And then Jerry comes in with the harmony. And, you know, most bands, I don't mean to be too pedantic, but it's like, you know, like with singing, usually you sing a known harmony, like a third or a fifth. Like they were doing fourths and sevenths, these weird, like eerie sounding harmonies. And so no one was doing anything like that in that low end sound they had with the harmonies and the vocals. And then Jerry was a great guitar player. So we were just, you know, gobsmacked by how good they were. And they didn't really put on a show. That was the other thing that was crazy. It was like, you know, we've seen Extreme our whole lives. We knew Nuno and Gary had these shticks, you know, they'd run at each other and Gary was around, you know, and all of a sudden Lane's just like this the whole show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, I mean, you can't take your eyes off him. You're like, oh, wow, you know, and getting to meet him, he was just the coolest guy ever, you know? I mean, it's so tragic. I don't know what was inside of him, you know, but I can tell you the guy I sat down and had drinks with and talked to was like so happy to be in the position he was in at that point, and was just like, you know, like I'm on a tour bus, I'm traveling the country, this is like the best thing. I'm gonna be going out with Van Halen soon, and I'm just like, dude, you're living the dream, this is so great, you know. And so 10 years later, 8 years later, you know.
And do you think that music was, when that grunge explosion happened, do you think that was a necessary shift? I've talked to other people about this, and, you know, obviously the 80s was certainly an era where, I love all those bands from that era. You know, I mean, great songs, timeless songs and music created. But certainly, though, that era gets dumped on a lot for being more style over substance. You know, then all of a sudden the grunge comes in, and the songs are, you know, certainly a little more downtrodden and a little more on the heavy side. You know, as far as the subject material, it wasn't all about partying and chicks and having a good time anymore. Do you think it was a necessary, almost cleaning out process like that had to happen because the 80s music might have been getting a little derivative?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think music runs in like a 10-year cycle in my twisted brain, where it's like, you know, the 70s had a certain sound, and it's almost like 82, 83, that's when that heavy kind of hair metal 80s sound came in. But then like 92, 93 was kind of when grunge took over. Then you had that new metal thing, you know, and then you got the gent that, you know, so it's like, I feel like that it's just a paradigm shift, and it's like a natural evolution of music. But, you know, I mean, you could put a nail in it and say, yeah, you know, I mean, this music, it wasn't self-aware enough, the 80s music, you know. It was too you either sing about cars, girls. I mean, I listen to the band, I moved to LA, and I cringe. I'm just like, every song was about either the girl at the time, or picking up girls, or driving a car that was fast, you know. And it's just like, hey, like there was no depth, you know. And so I think that kind of, you know, help put the nail in the coffin, because a lot of that stuff that came out of Seattle was so personal, you know. So Alice in Chains, sometimes I listen to that album and it makes me feel funny, because it's like I feel Lane's pain in every note he sings, you know.
And so now specifically like, what do you have coming up on the horizon that you can tell people that you're going to be doing? Any albums coming out, any tours? What's going on with you?
Right now we're so we just got back from the Cruzados 5-week tour of Europe, which went great. Other than illness on the road, you know, our bass player unfortunately got really sick. He spent about the last 3 weeks just coughing, and couldn't sing backup. But we released a new EP, 6 songs, and then we released a live EP as a companion. And they're on Spotify, they're on Apple Music, and super proud of it. So now we're doing shows around town and one-offs out of state. So we're doing some shows with the Fabulous Thunderbirds coming up. We're going to be playing with the Dead Boys in September. So we're trying to stay busy with the Cruzados doing that. As far as Little Caesar, Pharaoh, the bass player's mom, recently passed away. So we've kind of, you know, had to slow down a little so he can take care of that. But we're writing a new record right now, because we're planning to head back to Europe, probably not till next year. Probably next April or May we'll go back. But we want to have a little record. We want to have a new Little Caesar record out when we go back on tour over there. So we're just trying to get, you know, our ducks in line to keep the machine rolling, basically. And those are my main 2 things. I'm writing with Paul again, you know, the Disreputable Few partner. So we're maybe putting a 3-piece together there, and trying to keep teaching guitar and doing session work is the other thing that, you know, keeps me nice and busy.
And what's touring like nowadays? Because obviously, as we get older, the narrative in our life changes. You know, maybe we have a job that keeps us anchored, to a certain area, or significant other, or kids, or whatever. Like what's an itinerary that you guys feel comfortable with, or you specifically feel comfortable with, like touring? You know what I mean? It gets harder, I guess, as you get older, probably, to just say, all right, going out for 6 months. I'll see you. I'll see you when I get back, or whatever. Do you have a comfort zone of like how long you like to go out for?
I'm good with like 3 4 weeks tops, because
Yeah.
you know, being over in Europe, I can fly my wife over, we can get a nice little vacation after.
Yeah.
This time we went for 5 weeks, and it was a little overwhelming. And the thing that's funny about it is, like, you know, when I played I played Bang Tango, and we're out on the road, you know, I might be out for 3 months, which was fine because I was young. I didn't give a shit, but
Right.
we'd play maybe 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week tops. This last tour, we did 6 nights in a row, 1 day off, 9-hour drive. Next day, 5 nights in a row, 1 day off, 11-hour drive. Then we played 2 shows, have 1 day off with an 8-hour. So it's like, yeah, it got, and that's why he got so sick, you know, because that's a, you know, for a youngster, that's a hard schedule to keep up. And we're doing it as, you know, guys ranging from 50 to 70. You know, Lauren, the guitar player, he just turned 70, and he's a badass, man. He's the Forrest Gump of rock. I always tell everybody. I mean, he came up in '69 in Detroit, opening up for MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges, then moved to New York in '71 or '72 and started opening up for this little band called Kiss. Yep. And then that didn't work out, so he went to London and met these guys called the Sex Pistols, and then that didn't work out, so he came back to LA and opened up for this band called Van Halen, and then opened up for this other band called AC/DC that eventually they became kind of big. And then there's pictures of him. Yeah. I mean, he drank Jack with Bon Scott and had Sid Vicious on stage with him. I got pictures of Sid Vicious and him on stage.
That's crazy. That's a life well lived right there. I'll tell you, man. I mean, that's pretty fucking crazy. And you know, so you know, obviously when you're out on the road, you're that age. You know, you're probably packing different things as you get older, right? You're not so worried about the street drugs. Now it's more like the Tylenol and the you know, that kind of stuff, right? The Bengay and the
oh man, that's
keep
like
everything loose.
Man, you got any Tylenol? I need to sleep tonight. But Mark, to tell you, you know, people ask all the time, our schedule, it goes like this. This is a basic day on tour. Is I'll start it in the morning. We wake up maybe at 10 o'clock, lobby call to get in the van to do a drive. But we'll wake up and meet around 9 o'clock for breakfast, because we try to stay in hotels that serve breakfast so we can have a little something for the day. Get in the van, drive anywhere from 4 to 6 hours every day. Then we usually drive to the hotel, drop our bags, immediately go back to the van, drive to the venue. We have a tour manager, but he's also a helper. So he'll help us load all the gear in. We set up, we do sound check. They feed us. We come hang out for maybe 2-3 hours, play the show. After the show, we do a meet and greet. So we do autographs and pictures and hang out for a half hour, pack up the gear, put it in the van, go to the hotel room, and literally go to bed and do the same exact thing 6 days in a row.
So it's not as glamorous always as people think. You know what I mean? Like when you're in your bedroom and you're playing that air guitar when you're 12, 13 years old, that's not the stuff you're thinking about doing right there. The long drives, the, you know, the sound checks, the, you know, cramming into a van for 4 to 6 hours. I mean, you know, there certainly is an unglamorous side to it all too, you know?
Absolutely. But, you know, when you're standing on stage and there's 8,000 people and you look out and they're screaming or they're singing along with your songs, you go, kind of worth it. This is
that's
like
the payment. Absolutely.
That's the hour and a half. I mean, we were having so much fun on stage this tour that we were like, we'd look at each other and go, I can't believe there's one more song. Like, oh my God, we got the encores that we're done. Oh Jesus.
Are you somebody that gets to go out? Are you somebody that gets to go out as a fan? And, you know, a lot of the artists I talk to on here are guilty of not doing this. And they all say that they don't do this as much as they would like to. But, you know, but do you get to go out, you know, often as a fan and go see live music?
I try to. I definitely try to. I'm a fan of music. So, you know, I went and saw the Light Up the Blues night at the Greek right before I went, literally 2 days before I left, which was Stephen Stills, Neil Young, Willie Nelson, and Joe Walsh. They all played together and played each other's songs, and it was jaw dropping. It was so great, you know. So yeah, I try to, you know. And when we have opening acts, I try to go out and watch them, at least a song or two, you know. And we see some good people opening up for us, you know. Or sometimes we get a day off and they'll go, hey, there's a good local band. I'm the guy that'll go, yeah, let's go. When am I going to see a band in Denmark again? You know, like
well, and you know, sometimes it really pays off going to see those opening bands, because, you know, sometimes in those rare instances, you know, you are blown away, and like that's when you see that band and you're like, wow, I came here to see the headlining band, But man, that band's, you know, it's going to be tough to top what I just saw. You know what I mean? And you get that pleasant surprise sometimes, you know? I mean, it doesn't always happen. And you're usually there to see the headlining band, but, you know, there are some great bands out there. And, you know, as I said earlier in the interview, I'm trying to be better about just, you know, like, you know, kind of trying to, as you said earlier, keeping your finger on the pulse and kind of knowing like what's going on a little bit. You know what I mean? It's hard because, as I said, all that influx of music coming in out there, it's extremely difficult. You know, I mean, it's not for a lack of material out there, but I mean,
yeah. You know, and touring around Europe, the funny thing I find is that it's almost like regressive to what we are, you know, like we're moving forward with like this electronic stuff and backing track. Like they're going to just a raw guitar and amps, drums, and man, we did a festival in Fürth, Germany, and the band that headlined it, the Cruzado, it was, God, there was 10 bands, but then it was the Cruzados and this band, I think they're called Electric Alley from Spain. And God, they sounded like mid 80s Bon Jovi with the hooks and all. And this guy, he could sing like Ron Young, the singer for Little Caesar, was floored. He goes, this kid's voice, like it was flawless. Every note he sang was pitch perfect. And I mean, and he just had like projection, he had stage presence. You know, will the band do anything? I mean, I don't know. They're huge in Spain, you know, and they're branching out to the rest of Europe right now, which is a pretty fresh market. You know, in the States, it's hard. You know, club owners, they're not expecting much. It's hard to get a great guarantee unless you're a big band already, you know, and you can go out and open for bands, and that's good, you know, if that band has a big following, you know. But over there, they take a lot more chances. They want live music, so they're booking. You know, I mean, I feel like there's places we've played like off the beaten path that people just come out because, hey, it's live music. You know, I mean, we played in this little town called Lockhammer, Germany, which is on the border of Poland. I mean, it is like you can hear the dogs barking. It is like that far east. And like we brought like 170 people out. The town, I think, has like 2,000 people in it. So it's like, I think they all just, hey, it's the thing to do in the town, you know, but sure. When they're all dancing by the end of the set, you go, like, I think we're doing something right. And this has been a blast, you know? So I'm glad we get a chance to do that, because not many people do. And, you know, to see it in another land is even more amazing.
So I don't always end the interview always with this question, but it is my toughest question. And when I see somebody as enthusiastic as you about music, I have to for sure bounce it off you. The desert island pick. I'm dropping Mark on a desert island, and he can only take one fucking album. And Mark, I'm going to tell you right now, none of this cheating bullshit, no compilations, no greatest hits. You know, your album that you're going to live with on this fucking desert island for a long time.
Derek and the Dominoes. Layla.
Okay, wow. I always love when someone's so definitive, you know, answers it so definitively too. I have had guests on here who've answered it, you know, almost like it's a no-brainer to them, you know?
I've loved that album since I've been 12 years old, and I go back to it all the time. So at Fillmore East is the other juggling, but Layla wins out because there's so much more melody of songs on there rather than just jams. So yeah. Derek and the Dominoes, Layla is just 100%.
And I think and you know, I'll tell you, I think the hardest thing, you know, why people have such a hard time answering it, and you know, even myself, I ask it of people, but I don't even know if I myself have a definitive answer, because
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, it seems like if I'm going to be stuck out on that island, I really have to have that, you know, talk to people in extreme metal bands. But I don't know if I'd want to listen to extreme metal all the time. You got to kind of have something that kind of ebbs and flows and goes with the gamut of emotions. I don't know that I want to hear heavy all the time. I don't know that I want to hear, you know, soft all the time. So it's got to really be, it's really got to be that perfect album.
And I don't know if you're familiar with that Layla album, but it's very much that way. There's blues songs on there. There's ballads on there. There's hard rockers on there. There's like country-ish sounding stuff. So it's like you get a bit of everything with that album too. And that's the other reason that it was right there. Yeah. Hey, I got one story for you, Mark, that kind of brings together me moving to LA. So I'm doing a show with Billy Gibbons, and we had Sorum on drums and we had Paul on bass, and Sorum goes, "Hey, you guys mind if my buddy comes and sits in?" And we're like, "Yeah, who's your buddy?" "Oh, this guy named Slash." We're like, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah. He goes, "Slash likes to rehearse first, so we're going to do a rehearsal with him." I said, that's cool. So at the rehearsal, we're doing a bunch of ZZ Top songs, and Slash comes up to me, and he's super nice. We had a great time, but it always blew me away because he was one of my influences as a guitar player. And he goes, hey man, I don't know how to play Jesus Just Left Chicago. Can you show me the chord for that? And I'm thinking, I'm teaching Slash how to play Jesus Just Left Chicago. And then we decided to do a couple Allman Brothers tunes. We had Butch Trucks out. He was playing drums. And we did Whipping Post. And Slash goes, hey, what scale should I use for that one? And I told him the scale to use. And I'll never forget going home and just thinking, I probably would have never moved to LA if it wasn't for this guy. And now he's asking my advice on what to play on these songs with these legendary guys. And I get it. It's not that he doesn't know. Like, I didn't teach him anything he didn't know. He just thought enough of my musicianship that he asked for a little help, you know, a little advice, a little what should I do rather than my own homework, you know? So like it really like encapsulated the whole LA thing for me, that this is one of the reasons I moved here. And now I'm actually standing on stage with him and helping, you know, guide his way through this music. So it was a pretty cool moment in my life as a musician.
And now you brought his name up a couple times. So in closing, man, like what does he mean to you? Or like, what is it about his playing as a guitar player yourself? Like, what is it about Slash's playing, you know, that puts him up in that pantheon of the great guitar players?
I think he's fearless, you know, he's not scared to try different scales, different approaches. And he's very aggressive in his playing, which I really appreciate. Like and I'm not saying he doesn't take time and bend the note and let it sing or anything, but it's like, you can feel the angst in it. You can feel the energy and the note plays. And I mean, you're standing next to him and he's doing that, and you can reel it. Like, you can feel the energy bouncing off his guitar right at you, right next to you, and you're going, dude, this is like, holy shit. And it's like, I've played with a lot of great players and they don't all have that, you know? I mean, there's guys like Nuno who can pick up the guitar and it just flows like a piano on him, but you still don't feel that angst coming off. But there's something about the way Slash hits a note and it's like, it just bounces at you.
And I feel like Guns N' Roses is like another one of those bands, like a Nirvana, that you feel like, you know, geez, we you know, it kind of left us longing, you know what I mean? Like, you know, because I feel like if there would have been like no stoppage and that original lineup would have stayed together, that like we'd be talking about them right now, like the Rolling Stones, you know? I feel like I feel like they were that kind of band, you know?
It's a shame because I feel exactly the same way, Mark. I always thought, like, why would those guys let this thing fall apart that is
I know,
get to a level that we can only dream of, you know, and only once in a lifetime. And here, you know, you let it fall apart over egos and drugs and whatever else, you know, who knows what goes on behind those scenes.
And even all this reunion stuff, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it would excite me more if it was the original 5 guys on the Appetite album, you know what I mean? Like, it's great that Slash and Axl have buried the hatchet and the Duff is on board, but it's like, for me, you know, it leaves me wanting Steven, and it definitely it leaves me wanting Izzy, who always seemed like he was criminally overlooked and underrated. I mean, I named my goddamn cat after Izzy. Izzy was my favorite guy in the band. I love Izzy.
Oh, I was probably closest with him out of anybody in the band because he's that super cool. I mean, he is like Jeff. He's just laid back and he'll talk about anything, but dude loves music, loves to play. I can remember walking into a studio and him just taking his guitar up and handing it to me. I just want to hear what it sounds like. And it's like, oh, okay, yes, you know.
And do you have any kind of an idea? You know, have you lost touch with him? Do you know what he's doing? Because it just seems like he dropped off the planet after he left Guns. He did that great Izzy Stradlin in the Juju Hounds. That was a fucking phenomenal album. And then all of a sudden, it just seems like, you know, it's like finding Where's Waldo. You know what I mean? Like, well, where is he?
He's writing music and recording it pretty much at home out in Malibu. He's financially set, so he really doesn't need to do anything. And he's never been a big fan of being a rock star or being that guy. So I hate saying this, but like someday his estate will probably release like the 10 albums that he's done because they're pretty amazing. Yeah, but I would imagine they would be. Yeah, but he just has he has no interest in really doing more. And we always go like, dude, put this shit out, put a band together. And then he'll get excited. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. The guys I recorded with, we're going to do something. And then 6 months later, what are you doing I'm
well, you know, the whole experience is probably a little tainted because, you know, as you mentioned, there was certainly a lot of discourse in that band. And, you know, people forget he was really the first one to jump ship. You know, he got the hell out of there. So I think he got very jaded with the whole thing. You know, it's.
Absolutely. I mean, and it can be. I mean, I can't imagine that level, but even at the minimal level I've been at, it's overwhelming, you know? I mean, kind of an introvert, so to like be
Yeah.
out there, and he's an introvert. So I mean, think about being in the largest band in the world and everybody wants something from you, you know? I mean, everybody,
Yeah.
even if it's just time, people want something from you, you know? And
Yeah, and I think
it's
Slash was just so larger than life with the playing and with the top hat and with you know, being out in the front of the stage, and you could tell Izzy was never the guy that really craved that, you know.
Absolutely, but Izzy was that glue underneath that really held the band together. And Gilby's
really
great.
was.
I love Gilby like a brother. He's a great guy, you know.
Yeah.
But he's not Izzy, you know. Like Izzy had this feel, this slink, this Ron Wood to Keith Richards kind of thing that isn't there with well, now it's Richard Fortus, but it's probably more there with him. Richard's a pretty great player.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Mark, this was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you being willing to do this. And, you know, please keep in touch. And when you got something going on, you know, here in the near future, let's get on and do this again. It's been a real blast talking to you, man, really.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you. I love, great time, great questions. And absolutely, anytime I would love to do it again. So thank you.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks so much, buddy.
All right. Have a good one, Mark.
All the best with everything going forward, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You got it. You too. I look forward to listening.
All right. Later, brother. There he goes, folks. You're right. Rex Ruger has done it again. That is the great Mark Tremalia. He has played in Bang Tango. Check him out in the Cruzados. He's done work with Mark Knight, also another former Bang Tango guy. Mark Knight and the Unsung Heroes. Played with Michael DeBar. You hear he's doing stuff with Little Caesar, his past band, Disreputable Few. He's out there. You know, endless stories. Guys played with Billy Gibbons, all guys in the Allman Brothers. He's got a rock resume that is unrivaled. Played with a lot of the best, the all-time greats. Phenomenal session player. You heard about all of his endeavors on there. And regaling us with his stories. So, you know, go find out who and what he's doing and support him and everything he does. Great guy, great guest. Just so affable, gregarious, easy to talk to, man. That was a good one, folks. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. And go check out everything that Mark Tremalia does. Give that guy some support. I mean, you know, his personality and just his enthusiasm just radiates, at least it was for me, right through the computer screen. Just a guy who loves music. So go out and give that guy, you know, your undying support. Check out everything he does. Specific bands, you know, I won't comment on those specifically, but I will say that he, as a guest, Rex Ruger approved. But I do love the Cruzado stuff. I love everything that he did in Bang Tango. You know, certainly a guy who is, you know, a guitar player's guitar player. You know, you hear how guys like Nuno and Slash and, you know, they have a great admiration for this guy, and for good reason. So thank you so much, Mark, for coming on here, man. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I loved chopping it up with him. And until next time, folks, let me remind you to please take it easy and keep it sleazy.